Hi, welcome to DramaMeans. We're talking about the 2024 Thai BL drama, Wandee Goodday. Today, drama means unexpected romance. Drama means realizing you're vanilla. And drama means it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work.
Now, first, a little bit of a summary. When a young doctor is rejected by his crush because he's quote-unquote too vanilla, he sets out on a journey to sow his wild oats. But a chance one-night stand might force him to put his hoe phase on the back burner and explore a real relationship.
So I want to talk about this first episode.
Right.
I feel like this first episode was golden. And I really think that because of this first episode, it really drew people in. I remember watching the trailer during like GMMTV, like announcing all like their 2024 lineup. And I saw the trailer of this and I was like, oh, I love In. I really like Great. I don't know about this drama. And I was like kind of a little upset. And I was like, oh, they're like not giving In like a fair chance because In just joined GMMTV. Previously, he was in like The Miracle of the Teddy Bear, if you remember.
I do remember the teddy bear one, yes.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, In is such a good actor, and they're not giving him anything to work with in this GMMTV production. And I was like, ugh, whatever, right? I was like kind of upset about it because they're both like good, and I just feel like they deserved a better project, especially for their first project after signing with GMMTV. So this first episode really like had me rolling because it was just like, first of all, I've never seen In do like comedy like that because like Teddy Bear was so like drama, like telenovela kind of feel to it. It was like a pleasant surprise because I feel like, oh, In can do comedy.
Well, they really put the emphasis on the comedy in the first episode. Like, it is almost straight up comedy.
Yeah. And I kind of enjoyed it. Like, I was like ready for this like whole rom-com type thing, almost like daytime, like TV kind of feel to it. And then after the first episode, we didn't get that same comedy anymore.
Yeah, I do find that, and we should talk about the first episode more, holistically, but I do find with rom-coms, they do start out more calm first, even in American ones or, European ones, like they start out more comedy first, and then as the emotions get deeper, it's harder to go back to the comedy.
Yeah.
And so therefore to feel these deep emotions, they don't feel like they can go back into this well of just kind of being goofy or immature or anything, because now we have to deal with serious emotions. And I do feel like they lose some of the magic, because if I was watching just the first episode of this show, it does feel like you're going to sit down and watch something that puts the comedy first.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before, like priority of a show. Like, is this show's priority action, or is it drama, or is it romance, or is it comedy? And just from the first episode, this show feels like the priority is the comedy first, the romance second.
Yeah. But what I really enjoyed about this, especially with the first episode, was they showed us a couple that, like, it doesn't have to go smoothly. Like, things don't have to work out perfectly and 100%, like, everything, like, can't go wrong. And, the hair is perfect and the, like, the walk up and the smolder is, like, captivating. It's like, not all relationships start like that. And honestly, the majority of relationships don't start like that.
I always find the like hair toss and like the getting out of the car and the sleek legs from the shoes up, and the wind hits them at the right time, and then the other character is just like, oh my gosh, who is that? I find that so fake, phony, false, all the F words.
Honestly, it's cringe.
It has become cringe because I think it's now cliche. Like, I think that is the cliche thing to do. Whereas a little more bumbly, a little more awkward, a little less planned or staged feels just more real, but also a little more charming at this point, I think.
I agree. And it's really funny. So this is kind of off subject, but not really. There's like this viral video out there, and it's this guy trying to pull off this like dumb, like slow mo. I'm fucking hot with my shirt off, and I do a little hair flip type thing. And then in the background, there's this lady like doing a cliff dive, and she jumps in the water and does a full on like V and then face plant.
Okay.
And it was so funny. And then like literally all the comments were like, this video was so cringe until the lady saved the video.
Right.
You know, and like, oh, can you get out of the way of like the real purpose of this video? And it was like, you're in the way of the lady's like cool ass, you know, face plant or whatever it is. And I'm just like, that's exactly how I feel with those like, you know, those like walk ups, the slow mo, like, you know, little breeze or like flower petals, you know, just like the bullshit cringe, like I'm a hot guy kind of you know?
I feel the same way about thirst traps though. Like when they have those like thirst traps where it's like, it's a girl wearing a hoodie and it's like, show what's on top, then show what's underneath. And then they're poof and they're in a bikini. Boring. Like the ones I like is where it's like poof and she's in a Kool-Aid Man costume. And I'm like, that's funny. That girl is charming. Whereas the other ones are so pretentious, so false. It's just look at me energy, and it's gross. And I feel like if you met that in real life, you wouldn't want it. You would think there's something wrong with this person. Like, are you mentally okay? Yeah. Why are you walking in slow motion? Why do you carry a fan just off camera to blow your hair back? I don't get it. This is too much.
Yeah, so I loved that this was like, it kind of went all wrong, but then they got together and they like enjoyed each other's company. And the fact that like their like first sex like encounter is like him or them just like not really sure what to do, and then like always stopping and then like asking like weird questions, and then the freaking leg cramp got me. I was like laughing. But then, you know, and then they just sit there and they talk and they actually like bond, and then they go forward and actually have the sex.
But just talking about the way the one night stand is portrayed on camera, like just that one scene, is it's awkward at the beginning, and you know they're drunk, or are they drunk, or is it just Wandee that's drunk, or like it wasn't really clear. So he keeps asking, he keeps asking for consent, right? And then he gets it, and then they have a cramp, and then they watch TV together, and they come together. It feels like this isn't just about hooking up, and it's not gross. Like it's kind of endearing and a little bit charming how they end up kind of coming together and actually having the scene. So they wake up the next morning and you're not like grossed out by them having a one night stand. You're kind of like, I could cheer for these two. They might be a decent pair.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of a scene from a movie. It's like from the year 2000 called 100 Girls. And it's not like a work of art or anything, but it has like a similar tone to Wandee Goodday. You know, it's a comedy. It's a rom-com. And but there is kind of a cult following for this movie, and there's this one sex scene the male lead has with a girl, and like their sex scene was like not like magical, but it was fun, and it was like they enjoyed each other's company, and it was just kind of like, and they laughed through the whole sex thing. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's just, it made me think of Wandee and Yoyak's like their relationship, and it's not about like sexy romance. It's just enjoying each other's company and then finding a soulmate within each other. Mm-hmm. And that really works for me. But I actually want to go back and talk about the convenience store scene because, like, I have watched this particular scene like 4 times, and it's just as funny every time I watch it.
Funny or absolutely ridiculous?
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous, but it was meant to be.
Of course it is.
But it's just hilarious, and the fact that like the paper that he sticks on himself and it says free tasting, or like him sliding the condoms on the counter is like, I'll wait for you outside while you pay. And I'm like, he is so confident that Yo-Yak is gonna fall for.
But it's drunk confidence, but it's also like fake confidence. It's all of the confidences he's trying to muster. Like the fake it till you make it is off the charts. I do like how he like leans against whatever that is, and then he sees the sign that says like free tasting or whatever. Tastes yummy. I can't remember exactly what it says. And then he's like, I'll put that on my chest. And, like the conscious like effort of like, hello, I'm suave. This'll make me suaver. Like, no, it doesn't.
And then like, okay, like he knows that wannabe twerk that he does. It was so funny because like when that scene was going, Ryan's like, that's not even a twerk.
I mean, there's one thing. There's like twerking badly, and there's twerking in an embarrassing. Like if your mother started twerking, you'd be like, "Ugh, stop twerking, mom." But that wasn't even twerking. He was just kind of like, I don't know. It looked like he was like trying to churn butter or something. Just hopping up and down, like humping the air. I don't know what he was doing, but it wasn't twerking. Even though I think in his mind he's like twerking this convenience store aisle real good.
Like I'm just thinking about it, I'm just rolling. It was so funny. And really, like, I was not expecting anything from this drama, even though I love In. He's like really great. And I like great because he's really great.
How'd you go with that one? I like Fluke because they're Fluke. And I like Drake because he can drink.
Shut up. Anyway, it really pulled me in to want to keep watching it. The only thing is, for me, after the first episode, it really kind of started going like down.
Well, before we get into the rest of the show, past the first episode, I do kind of want to go back to that idea of like awkward meet cutes, because it is a trick in drama writing and in comedy writing. If you have a tableau, let's call it, let's say it's a meet cute or it's a romantic piece or it's supposed to be like a business meeting, like you have a genre of your tableau and you're looking at it from one direction. So let's talk about meet cutes. You look at meet cutes from the direction of the suave guy getting out of the car and he's just so handsome and his shirt is flowing, right? That's one way to go. A lot of times, if you want to subvert the expectation, you just turn everything completely upside down. And so you're, well, what's the smoothest thing we can do? And now let's take the most awkward version of the smoothest thing we could do and do that instead, but keeping the priority that it's a meet cute. And so a lot of times the action sequences, oh, let's make the biggest, boldest action sequence you can. We'll flip it upside down and see how actually subtle you can make it. And now you have a sequence that is so simply smooth that your characters just look effortlessly cool. And it gives you a completely different dynamic than it would have if you kind of went the typical route. So they always say, like, if you're struggling with a dramatic idea or comedic idea, turn it completely on its head and something will fall out. And then you can re-engineer a meet cute into be an awkward meet cute and to be what this was and not have to kind of go down the road that's been trodden before. And it's not like this show invented the awkward meet cute. We've seen it a lot before.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the way they did it in this one.
So, in the first episode, I really enjoyed their cute little interaction and whatnot. But that first meet that they have in like the doctor's office. I'm not sure Wandee did anything real, like as an orthopedic surgeon, to like go and he's like listening to his heart and like just I'm like, can you guys kind of do some research and like see what what an orthopedic surgeon would do when they meet with a patient? Like it just seems really weird and like off, and like both of them were like weirdly rude to each other. Like so
Yeah, I mean, he tried to test his range of motion a little bit, I guess. Like his like, oh, you can't lift your arm up. But it was a little weird that you would go see an orthopedic doctor so quickly. Like it, I think to your point, it felt like everything he was doing would be something they would do in the ER. It would like, let me listen to your heart. Oh, your shoulder hurts. Let's see where your shoulder hurts. Does it hurt here? Does it hurt there? By the time you get to like an orthopedic specialist, you should be like getting x-rays. You should be like getting further testing. Like it just felt like this was a little too preliminary for the type of meet it was.
yeah.
And I don't know, like Wandee felt like put off for having to be there. I get it. He was almost off work and then he had to go and take another patient. And then the guy was kind of a dick to him.
And he was definitely a dick to him, but also like being Wandee's character, like how professional he's supposed to be and how good he is with other patients. It's weird that he like lost his cool so easily. And then with him, like, oh, he agreed to go do this appointment. Like, as a professional, as like they claim Wandee to be, like I feel like wouldn't be so upset that he'd have to do it since he already agreed to do it. You know what I mean? Because like when it's about work, he's like he takes that responsibility really seriously. So it felt very like off his character.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they needed them to meet so that when they ran across each other, the post club Wandee runs into him, he recognizes him, and then tries to seduce him and all that. The only thing I didn't really get in that whole interaction was, why does Yoyak want him? Like, Wandee is out trying to like be not vanilla, and he's gonna get trashed, and he's American pieing it. He's like, I gotta get laid. But like, why is the other guy interested in him other than he carries him home?
And the thing is that I'm not sure he did want him until right at the door. He's like, "Hey, come in."
Yeah, I was like, well, why is he going in? This is a horrible date. It's not even a date. This guy like stalked you at a convenience store and then made you carry him home drunk. And then at the door is like, hey, you want to come in, baby? And I was like, why is he going in? I didn't quite get that.
Well, he said, do you want to come in and watch TV together?
But then they were making out before the door closed.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So I was like, I'm not sure. I get why it's happening on one side. I didn't quite get it for Great's character. I didn't quite understand why he was like, okay, sure, why not? I wish they would have built up that a little more. Like, I wish they would have put him in kind of an also position where we would understand like why he would do this.
Yeah.
Because we get it from one aspect. It just feels a little one-sided. And maybe, I mean, the title is Wandee Goodday, so maybe they don't care.
Well, I'm not really sure. Writing wise, they really put a whole lot of thought into like the development and like what each character's thinking at the moment. I definitely feel like it's very situational without really thinking what each character has going on in their brain. So I think a lot of times when we write, we think of like the situation they're in and like what would be funny, right? And what would be sexy, what would get them together. But they kind of forget to be like, well, what is this character thinking right now? What are they feeling? What is their goal? Like those things like get kind of put on the back burner.
Yeah, I just didn't understand where he was coming from in that exchange. Because, I mean, up until that point, I get it. He was being like, kind of like, all right, this doctor who I just saw, he's obviously tanked and he's like totally hitting on me. And then he passes out. You don't want to leave him heaped by the trash cans. He's not a piece of shit. Like, he's going to, like, carry him home. I wanted to understand that next step, just even like 10% more. Like, he thought he was cute earlier. Like, anything. Like, he's like, okay, he's a mess, but he's cute. Like, something.
Well, so they did do a little bit of a flashback of like when Wandee first walked in the door and they almost had like an instant attraction towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what they were trying to go for. It didn't really land.
Yeah, it felt like it wasn't enough.
Yeah. So it's an attempt, but not a good enough attempt.
I will say, I think for a first episode of the show, structure-wise, it's very well done. Like, I like that they start with the kind of sloppy makeout in the apartment, and then they go back and you see how they meet, and you kind of see where they get that. You introduce the other doctors, you introduce the best friends, you introduce the boxing, you introduce like where all these characters are. I do need to bring up the thing that you and I disagree on, because I was very confused with the way it was shot, the beginning of this episode. So the beginning of the episode, they're making out. Flashback 3 days earlier. Now we meet our doctor, and he's on the way to work, and this person gets hit by a scooter, and he's the first guy on the scene, and he runs up, and he's like, oh my gosh, this person has been hit by a car. And the boyfriend of the woman who's been injured is like, goes to pick her up. He's like, no, don't pick her up. And the boyfriend turns to him, and they slow-mo the boyfriend, and they slow-mo Wandee, and then they cut to boxing. And I'm thinking, oh, he recognizes this guy from boxing. So now we're in a flashback inside the flashback. So now in the boxing scene, I keep looking for the boyfriend and Wandee. I'm like, oh, this must be where they met. They met at this boxing ring. And then it's two people who are neither of these people in the ring boxing. And I'm like, what is happening? And you're like, no, this is the other, God, we're introducing the love interest. I'm like, what? So lost, I had to go back and rewatch it. And it's just the way it was edited, like slow-moing the boyfriend and then giving Wandee that moment of like, like, I don't know what he's thinking in that moment, but they give him a close-up of, and then we cut to boxing. And I'm like, what does boxing have to do with these two characters? Absolutely nothing.
So, that weird, like, slow-mo look over to Wandee is like, who's this guy telling me what to do? And then it's Wandee's like, you better not fuck with her. You're gonna make it worse.
That was the weakest you better not fuck with her look ever. That was a, do I know you? Look, like, have we run across each other somewhere? Perhaps at a boxing ring?
But the thing is, since you watch that first scene of like the makeout, right? So and then it cuts to the boxing. You should realize the boxer is the guy that was kissing Wandee in the first.
Well, first of all, very different context. He's got cornrows in. He's boxing. He's got his not that he doesn't look like the same guy. He's the same guy, but it's so out of context because I'm not looking for him in this scene. I'm looking for this boyfriend dude. And maybe his girlfriend isn't going to be in this boxing scene. And Wandee, I'm looking for them. I'm like, how are they related to this moment? So I completely miss who's actually doing the boxing, because that would have been crazy if the doctor was boxing. I thought what was going on in the ring was like just like nonsense, like background to what was going to be happening like ringside between the boyfriend and Wandee, which was nothing, by the way. Spoiler alert. Wandee wasn't at that boxing match because he was too busy helping the lady with her scooter.
And they hadn't even met then.
Yes, I know that now. It was just confusing in the moment. I'm just saying editing is important.
Yes, it is.
And watching through that, I was just jarred. And I was like, why are they doing a flashback inside a flashback? Which is also one of my like pet peeves. Like, I don't love it when we're going 3 days earlier and then we watch something. It's like, and it's in 3 days before that. You're like, shut up and just tell me a story already.
Yeah. I do have to say there's been several like Thai productions where the editing is like they don't cut soon enough.
That was exactly my problem. They should have just never cut back to Wandee, and I would have never had a problem with it.
Yeah. So it's it happens a lot, especially with the Thai ones. There's some other ones too but there's just like I'm like, okay, you can cut now. You don't, because it gets really awkward when you land on an actor for too long and they're done with their scene, right? And then they have to just like continue to act even though they have nothing left. And then this also happens a lot with especially these Thai dramas is the camera's on the actor for too long and the actor feels like they still need to continue to do something, and then they shake their head. And their shake their head is so awkward and so unnecessary, and it just feels so off. And I'm like, and I've seen so many Thai dramas where like they always shake their head before the cut of a scene, and I'm just like, man, you really needed to cut that out because it was so unnatural.
Well, it's hard because I know a lot of writers that don't know when to end scenes. Where I've worked with a lot of writers where my notes on their script would be, this scene ends 2 couplets too late. Like, end this scene, like, work up to a crescendo, end the scene. Work up to a crescendo, end the scene. End the scene while you still have momentum. And a lot of people's instinct is to work up to that kind of momentum moment and then let all of the air out of the balloon and then start over. And that's when movies and shows start to feel really oddly paced, is because you keep making me hold my breath. What's going to happen next? Is this scene still going? Is this scene still going? And now I'm exhaling. And now I go to the next scene, and then I got to start the momentum all over again.
Yeah.
So I do think that was a little bit of the problem with this, other than also me being very, very stupid.
So moving past, Wandee and Yoyak, I really think that there was an inconsistency with Tem, with her character. And this is another thing where like the character is servicing something, right? So in the beginning, she's introduced, and you get the feeling that Yoyak has a crush on Tem. And the first introduction, she's very like cut, like, we're friends, it's all about business, you gotta pay me for like tutoring you and helping you take notes and things like that. And it's very like casual, we're buddies, right? And I almost felt like, oh, Tem might have had her own story that might have been like a GL line for her, and it was very like undecided, so they didn't really want to like specify if she had feelings for Yoyak or not. But the thing is, when you go back and watch it, the way she treats him changes for every time they needed her to be something. So Yoyak had a crush on her, right? But we all know he can't be with Tem, right? Because we all know it's gonna be Wandee and Yoyak. So she's very like, oh, we're buddies, we're friends, right? That's how she comes on. Then it slowly goes into like, oh, well, now she has to become an obstacle for real between Wandee and Yoyak, and it has to be some kind of dumb love triangle thing. And then she's like, oh, I'm having feelings for Yoyak, and I'm going to look at him in his eyes longer. And it's just like, but that wasn't her before. You know what I mean? And so she never gave off any kind of like inkling for the audience to think, oh, she is an actual rival of Wandee. Up until that moment where like Yoyak has to decide. And it just...
Well, she's servicing a scene instead of the scene servicing her character.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have a character. Her character is what the scene needs in that moment.
Yeah.
Which we see it a lot, especially in love triangle stories where that third point in the triangle just has to be what they are. If they're going to be a companion and a friend and a shoulder to cry on in one scene, and a platonic interest in another scene, and a roaring, raging, romantic interest in the next scene, it's because the script and the story calls for it, not because that character has any organic feelings.
Yeah, so she's just a tool.
Yeah. And that's just means you're not caring about those secondary characters the way you should be.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before where, like, you know, when every character gets serviced and every character has a goal, it just feels more genuine and you care about everybody. And literally in this one, like, I could have lived without most of the characters.
Right. And I think when we say things like that, we're not saying that every character needs to be given the same amount of development. Obviously, your lead characters get the most development, and then your B team gets the second most development, and then the C team gets the, and so on down the list. But you do need to think about them a little bit. Like, there's an appropriate amount we need to know about our B team to relate to them.
Yeah.
And then there's appropriate amount we need to know about the convenience store guy that is selling him condoms. Like, it's way, way less, but we still have to understand that guy works at a convenience store. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, like, there's things that have to be kind of groundwork laid, and they didn't really lay it.
Yeah, even if a character has to service as an obstacle for the couple or for your protagonists, they still have to feel real. And I didn't really feel that neither Te or Tem, they were just an obstacle. Like, Tara had to be like, you know, what started it all off, right? But he's just always this obstacle. And also, he had way too much going on and it became repetitive, where it's always like, well, I know you're having a fake relationship, or I know, you know, like, you need to like me now again. It's just like, it's so continuously repetitive that it just, everyone's sick of seeing him. And they could have used that time to service a different part of the story, because we know what he wants already. We don't need to see it over and over again. It doesn't, you know, the couple doesn't have to always have that same obstacle over and over again. It should have progression.
Well, it's also a simple obstacle because it is just a character who wants the opposite thing that our audience wants. Our audience wants Yoryak and Wandee to be together. And a love triangle character, it's a very binary thing. They want the opposite of that. And that's why it feels so kind of surface level drama and surface level conflict, because they just want the opposite thing that our main characters ultimately want and what our audience wants. So annoying characters become annoying when they keep arguing against the premise of the show, right? Like, if you keep arguing about, you can't be together with them, after a while you're like, shut up, because that's what we want to see, and you're preventing us from seeing the thing we want to see. It could be so much more complex if we focused on the emotions of the main characters, rather than throwing in a love triangle, rather than throwing in this convenient person to the scene. What about our two leads and their emotions and their personalities are keeping them from being together? What are their traumas that keep them from being together, rather than just someone from the outside coming in and going, no, me instead? Because you're going to still have obstacles with that person. Like, nothing's perfect. So it's like, oh, it's hard here, it's easy here, I must chose the easy route. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it just becomes generic, because it's, honestly, if you really look at the story, it's pretty generic. We've seen this type of story before. You know, fake relationship, starting from a one night stand. There's nothing new that we haven't seen before. And then they also just put in like the most generic options to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Meaning, like, I really hate that people think that love triangles are like the end all be all of like an obstacle for a couple.
Yeah, it's so obvious that it doesn't feel interesting to me.
Yeah. And it's generic. It's so easy. Anyone can stick a love triangle in. Or in this case, like a square. I don't know.
It's a
Whatever.
trapezoid. I don't know.
But I mean, they had like good points in this whole drama. Like, with the Yoyak's trauma with his mom dying and like having this hallucination of a man, every time he has any significant boxing match, and it's like they try to go through it, and it comes up a lot, but you don't really dig that far like deeply into his emotions other than like, oh, he'll have a nightmare here and there. He'll see a guy and then he starts sweating, and then all of a sudden, like, if Wandee shows up, then he like pulls himself together. Like, he's gone through like 2 or 3 matches of the same thing because they don't have enough, I feel like, substance and content to make this whole show like worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, I feel like they could have spent more time with Oye and like his, bearing the responsibility of like the boxing ring or club, and owing money because he can no longer afford to like maintain this club, right? Or boxing ring or gym or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. And I know that like Oye and Cher has like their own story, so I don't know if they're like, oh, well, if we're gonna do their story, we don't want to like dig too deep into like their coupling and their story, but I feel like it goes in with Yoyak's trauma, and they should have spent more time on that because that's real struggle, right? And like real character development, and like working together as a couple to build a relationship. These are obstacles. These are real life obstacles that people have to go through, and that can make a relationship stronger, or it could break a relationship. But these are things that you could spend more time on rather than the generic love triangle or love square or whatever you want to call it. But like, there was so much that they could have done better in this drama to make it more interesting for the audience.
It feels like they just went the simplest route and then, just kind of felt like that was good enough. It does get difficult when we're talking about keeping the comedy alive and then also exploring trauma. Like, I would forgive them a little more for not wanting to go there and go into deep, complex emotions if the show would have stayed on the comedy train.
But it didn't.
But it didn't. So if you're going to get off the comedy train, you got to jump onto something. And it felt like they jumped onto a little more generic, paint by the numbers love story. Again, like, we've seen the fake couple that turns into the real couple. We've seen love triangles a million times. The only time I find love triangles interesting is if all 3 points feel like they're actually real options. Like, you really don't know which way our protagonist is going to go because it's very complicated, and those are so rare.
I'm trying to think if there's like a really good like love triangle where like you can see it, but it generally, a lot of the love triangles have been so generic.
You mean you're not a big Twilight fan? Team furry monster or team vampire?
Well, I'm going to admit this right now. I've never read nor watched any of the Twilights, so I can't even tell you if I like them or not, but I'm just not that interested.
I don't even know which team is which.
I do know there's Edward and Jacob because I have friends that are, I believe one of them is a Jacob fan and then the other is an Edward fan. I don't know.
Which one is the vampire that sparkles?
Edward.
That's Edward.
Yeah.
So Jacob is the guy who's
the werewolf.
The werewolf, right? Also don't care. Anyway.
Also, I have an issue where like a show feels like they have to pair off everybody. Like it's just so unnecessary. Like making Tem and Te like a possible like coupling is so weird to me.
Well, this is straight out of the trope playbook. Like, there's actually a name for this trope.
Oh.
It's called pair the spares. It's when you take your side characters and you don't know what else to do with them, so you pair them up. And it happens the most on like long running dramas or long running sitcoms where suddenly you have Ross and Rachel, but then Chandler and Monica also have to be in a relationship. And then Joey and Phoebe, like all of a sudden.
Well, Joey and Phoebe never ended up together.
No, but they would like flirt with that.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's a bad example because those are kind of 6 leads on a show. But when you look at especially 1 hour dramas and you start seeing how they pair the spares after a while because they don't know what else to do with the side characters. And I've been on some shows that are guilty of it that I will not name any names.
Yeah. And it's just like, guys, people can be single, especially people we don't care about. Like Ter, first of all, like he is so not worthy of having anybody. Like, first of all, he rejects Wandee, right? And then there was a girl pursuing him, but then he was so obsessed with Wandee because now he's jealous of Yoyak. And then he's such a tool bag. Like, there's no fucking way why he should have any kind of pairing. And then you pair him with Tem, which, okay, we don't want Tem to be with Yoyak, but we like Tem. There's nothing wrong with her. Why? Why?
Because she's there and she needed a boyfriend.
There could be anybody else. If you really needed to pair her off with somebody, right? But like, it's just so dumb, like ridiculous. And I'm like, okay.
I just don't understand the motivation for it. Like, what about their story throughout the show required them to like find love at the end? Really, like to quote that one show I can never remember the name of, How I Met Your Mother. Which is, it's not about you, Patrice. Like, it's just not about you, Tem. It's not about you. The show's not about you. You're only there to service the main 2 characters, so you don't get a pair at the end. I'm sorry, you feel like a nice lady, but no.
Well, especially Ter, though. Like, why? His character's so yuck. And also, again, his character changed. Like, from this kind of scummy, use and abuse kind of dude, where like he rejects Wandee, and then like in the second breath he's like, can you let me have the internship kind of thing. It's just like, he's so yucky. And then and then he gets like obsessive, and then he tries to like go for Wandee during like the Japan trip and stuff, and it's just like, he's yucky, he's slimy, blah. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm over it, I'll give you a ride to Yoyak's like boxing match. And then all of a sudden he's a good guy and then deserves a girl. Like, no, he needs to go and like self-reflect. He does not need a coupling.
You go sit in a corner. You're in timeout, mister.
Anyway, I am so not for that. And there's just a lot that went wrong in this drama. And through comments too, like, I feel like a lot of people let this fizzle, or they let it fizzle, and then audience just like was enjoying it at first, and then it just kind of went downhill. It got really boring, and there were times when I like started like not paying attention. Anyway, so my rating, I feel like my rating is more like step out to get fresh air.
Yeah, I was gonna say if it's any higher than that, it would be a little suspect.
The thing is, I wanted to give it onboard karaoke because I really like Anne. I really like Great. I think they had good chemistry together. their moments are pretty like good, and that's just how good they are rather than how good the show is. So I just don't really want to give it like more than what it deserves. And it just yeah, I needed to step out and get some fresh air on this one.
It really boggles the mind too with how it started. It just felt like, did they not go in with a plan, or did the plan change? Like, why give us something that was charming and, almost kind of like self-deprecating in a way, and funny and kind of goofy, and then it kind of turned into bad melodrama. I would be interested to know why that happened.
So this is based off of a book. So I don't actually know how the book is. I didn't read the book. I know that there's actually another story. This is like technically a sequel to Oye and Cher's story. So their book was first, and then Wandee Goodday is second. I don't know. I haven't read any of these books. I can't say anything about it, but I don't know if the book is the writing of this, or if they changed a lot, and the production, or director or whatever it is, kind of like half-assed it. I'm not sure, but as the story goes, there's a lot wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
well, we will never know.
yeah. I enjoy In. I enjoy Great. I'm ready to watch them in their next thing. Honestly, I would like to watch something a little bit more mature, and a little like adult like, they're adults, so it would be nice to see something a little bit more, not dramatic, but just a little bit, more serious, I guess. I really want them to use In as, and like let people see how good of an actor he really is, because in this one there wasn't much for him to show, to be honest. Anyway, our rec for this week is 100 Girls. It's the year 2000 US movie. I think it's available for streaming, like on Amazon Prime and Freevee, things like that. So yeah, it has a very similar tone. It's a rom-com, starts out with comedy, and it's an unexpected love as well. So go check that out. And that is it for us this week. Thank you for listening.
See you next time.